As the supply ship Hesperus approached the eerie shores of the Flannan Isles, an unsettling silence greeted the crew. The lighthouse, once a beacon of life in the wild, storm-lashed Atlantic, stood dark, its beam extinguished, its keepers nowhere to be seen. In the winter of 1900, a chilling event unfolded off the northwest coast of Scotland, on the remote Flannan Isles, an uninhabited group of rocky outcroppings battered by the icy waves of the Atlantic. The isolation and stormy seas made these islands the perfect place for a lighthouse, which stood as the sole bastion against the treacherous waters. 3 lighthouse keepers were stationed on the island of Eileen Moore James Ducat, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur. What was supposed to be an ordinary shift for these men turned into one of the most haunting maritime mysteries of all time. A mystery still whispered about today. Their sudden disappearance with no trace, no explanation, and only cryptic clues left behind. On December 15, 1900, a passing steamer ship, Arctur, noted in its log that the lighthouse on Eileen Moore was dark, its beam absent from the horizon. It was highly unusual for the lighthouse to be unlit, as it was critical to guiding ships safely through the hazardous waters. The weather had been stormy for days, and some captains assumed the bad conditions might have prevented the keepers from lighting the lamp. Still, a report was made. It wasn't until December 26, 1900, that the supply ship Hesperus finally arrived at the Flannan Isles, carrying provisions and relief for the men on duty. Captain James Harvey expected to see the 3 keepers at the landing to greet him, but there was no sign of them. The lighthouse stood tall, silent, and dark against the backdrop of stormy skies. Harvey sent his crewman, Joseph Moore, to investigate. What Moore found would haunt him for the rest of his life. The door to the lighthouse was unlocked, but the interior was eerily calm. The table was set for a meal that had never been eaten, with plates still on the table and an overturned chair suggesting sudden movement. One of the oilskins, the heavy coat used to protect against the harsh elements, was still hanging on its peg. If the men had gone outside, they had left in a hurry. The logbook was checked for any clues, and it revealed something strange. On December 12th, one of the keepers, Thomas Marshall, noted severe winds, the likes of which I have never seen before, despite the fact that no storms had been reported in the area at the time. The log also described how James Ducat had become quiet and withdrawn, and how Donald MacArthur had been praying, something highly unusual, as MacArthur was known for his strong, skeptical nature. The last entry, made on December 15th, was chilling in its simplicity. Storm ended, sea calm. God is over all. But no storm was reported, and the men were gone. The investigation that followed only deepened the mystery. All 3 men had vanished without a trace. There were no signs of a struggle, and their bodies were never found. The only clues were a series of strange disturbances around the island. 2 of the lighthouse's boats were missing, but no sign of them was seen floating near the island or along the shore. A massive boulder had been dislodged from a cliff, crashing down onto the landing area, though there were no signs of damage or footprints around it. Some speculated that the men had been swept away by a freak wave, but this didn't explain why one of them had left his coat behind in the freezing cold. Others whispered about more eerie possibilities, that the isolation had driven them mad, or that something far more sinister had visited the island that night. In the years that followed, locals began to speak of the Flannan Isles as cursed. Sailors passing by at night claimed to see ghostly lights flickering in the distance, and some swore they heard faint disembodied voices carried on the wind. The lighthouse continued to operate, but the story of the vanished keepers became legendary, a warning to all who ventured too close to the eerie shores of the Flannan Isles. Over time, many theories emerged to explain the disappearance of the lighthouse keepers, but none could definitively solve the mystery. The most common explanation was that a powerful wave had swept the men away while they were tending to equipment outside. Yet this theory was contradicted by the lack of evidence showing damage to the area where they would have been working. Others believed that foul play could have been involved. Some even speculated that the keepers may have been involved in a disagreement that turned violent. But again, no signs of struggle were found inside the lighthouse. Then there were the supernatural theories. The Flannan Isles had long been associated with ghostly tales and ancient folklore. Stories of the little people or spirits that roamed the desolate islands were part of local legend. Could the keepers have encountered something beyond the realm of the natural? Some locals whispered about sea creatures or strange beings emerging from the deep, luring the men to their doom. There were also reports of mysterious lights in the sky around the time of the disappearance, fueling speculation about extraterrestrial involvement. But perhaps the most haunting theory was the simplest: isolation. Being stationed on a lonely island with nothing but the howling wind and crashing waves for company could have taken a psychological toll on the men. Fear, paranoia, and isolation can drive even the strongest minds to the edge. Did they lose themselves to the eerie quiet of the island? Or was there something else, something lurking just beyond the reach of their lamp's light? Though over a century has passed since the Flannan Isles lighthouse mystery, the disappearance of James Duckett, Thomas Marshall, and Donald MacArthur remains unsolved. Their absence is like a ripple on the sea, unseen but felt. To this day, visitors to the island report strange occurrences. The lighthouse, now automated, stands silent and watchful, as if still waiting for the return of its long-lost keepers. Yet, as the wind whistles through the rocks and the waves crash endlessly against the shore, one can't help but feel that the island has claimed its own. Perhaps the true explanation lies not in the realm of the ordinary, but in the whispers carried on the winds, the forgotten secrets of the sea, and the dark shadows that linger just beyond the horizon. This story, based on true events, remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of maritime history. With no definitive answers and an array of theories, the disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers is a haunting reminder of the dangers of isolation and the unknown forces that may still linger in the forgotten corners of our world.